I'd like to think that there might still be salmon and steelhead to fish for when my great-grandkids try fishing. That's from Bob, who lives in Brush Prairie in my district. Now, I've heard Bob's sentiments echoed literally from thousands of folks across Southwest Washington. Unfortunately, our salmon runs are now fighting for survival. It's practically a miracle when a fish can make it upstream without getting caught between a sea lion's teeth. They certainly don't get caught unscathed. Mr. Speaker, what we currently have on the Columbia River is an ecosystem seriously out of balance. I recently met with local fishing guides who, with despair in their voices, told me between 70 and 100% of the fish they land show visible signs of a struggle with a sea lion, barely escaping becoming a meal for the already engorged sea lions. We're seeing fewer and fewer salmon, steelhead, and sturgeon make it past this gauntlet of sea lions as the fish make their way upstream. Donald from Vancouver told me the other day he reeled in a salmon. Half of a salmon. A sea lion was fighting him for the other half. Look, we're not anti-sea lion. Oh my goodness, no. We're just for protecting our native fish, a Pacific Northwest icon. And in order to do that, we've got to make it easier to remove some of the most egregious offenders, problematic pinnipeds. Sea lions aren't endangered anymore. In fact, they're doing really, really well. They weigh a ton. Literally, a Steller sea lion can weigh up to 1 ton. Between the California and the Steller sea lions, their populations have increased by hundreds of thousands. And now they're overindulging on an all-you-can-eat buffet of salmon at numbers that are totally unnatural on the Columbia River system. The sea lions are winning this battle. 45% of spring Chinook adult salmon disappear between the mouth of the Columbia River and the Bonneville Dam. Oregon's Fish and Wildlife Agency has concluded after much study that the Willamette River steelhead runs are facing a 90% chance of extinction due to predation. That's why we're here today, Mr. Speaker, in a bipartisan effort to save our wild fish from being decimated by animals that have migrated out of their natural habitat and whose population is ever increasing. My bill, the Endangered Salmon and Fisheries Predation Prevention Act, provides tribal and government resource managers with the means to rapidly respond and remove California and Steller sea lions from specific areas where they're posing the most harm to our salmon restoration efforts. Mr. Speaker, the Columbia River makes up the entire southern border of my district. The river is a lifeline for clean, affordable energy and brings economic benefit through both recreational and commercial fishing. While lethal take of sea lions is a last resort, it is necessary to protect the hundreds of millions of dollars in investments that the Northwest residents have made to protect and enhance salmon and other ESA-listed species on the Columbia River. Non-lethal solutions like hazing and literally transporting sea lions hundreds of miles away and releasing them, none of them have worked. The sea lions come right back. And in Washington State, we're forced to live with the cautionary tale of failing to take strong action. In the 1980s and 90s, federal officials failed to grant authority, the same authority that we're asking for today, to halt the salmon slaughter in Seattle at the Ballard Locks. And by the time Congress finally acted, a whole run of steelhead was decimated. Let's not allow history to repeat itself. H.R. 2083 is a much-needed solution. The bill would amend Section 120 of the Marine Mammal Protection Act to authorize the Secretary of Commerce to provide states and local tribes with the tools necessary to humanely manage sea lions on the waters of the Columbia River and its tributaries, as long as the sea lions are not part of an ESA-listed species. This is common sense, Mr. Speaker. Additionally, this legislation allows not only the Northwest state wildlife agencies, but also qualified tribes to obtain permits to help protect the recovery of ESA-listed salmon, authority not granted currently under the law. Simply put, my bill cuts through the bureaucratic red tape, streamlines the permitting process, and allows states and tribes to rapidly respond to remove sea lions from areas they pose the most threat to salmon recovery. Mr. Speaker, this is the last line of defense against fish runs bordering on extinction. This bill enjoys bipartisan support, both here in Congress and at home. As I mentioned, my friend and neighbor to the south, Kurt Schrader, has been an invaluable partner in getting this bill to the floor today. This legislation is supported by the governors of Washington, Oregon, and Idaho, the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission, the Washington, Idaho, and Oregon State Department of Fish and Wildlife, the Owako. 30 more seconds, Mr.
Additional minute to the lady from Washington.
Gentlelady from Washington is recognized for 1 minute.
The Ilwaco Charter Association, the Coalition of Coastal Fisheries, the Coastal Conservation Association of Oregon and Washington, and Public Utilities are among the bill's supporters. I'm also pleased a companion bill is moving through the Senate now with bipartisan support, underscoring the urgency of this issue. I ask my colleagues to join me today in supporting H.R. 2083. Let's make sure our kids and our grandkids and our great-grandkids can experience the thrill of reeling in their first salmon on the Columbia River. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
The gentlelady from Washington yields back her time. Gentleman from Colorado.